When I was asked to speak about cyber risk in 25 minutes, I almost laughed because, how can you cover everything in only 25 minutes when it comes to cyber risk? So we're going to certainly condense this and try and cover some of the things that I think leaders are maybe ignoring when it comes to cybersecurity and probably should do maybe a little bit more diligent job of prioritizing within their organizations. So we're all here, obviously, today to innovate, talk about innovation. One of the things that we like to do as innovators is collaborate to talk. So one of the things I want to make sure I save for is time at the end for questions and interaction with the audience so I always learn at these events from my peers and from others in the audience who've experienced unique cyber risk situations. You can't in the field understand everything that could possibly happen. Some of the obvious risks and threats that are out there, but we're going to talk a little bit about the things that increase flexibility, productivity, and convenience for an organization. Quick audience interaction here. Let's see a show of hands. How many of you in the audience have a cell phone? Easy question, right? Every hand better probably be up. Smartphones, at least. How many of you use those smartphones for both pleasure and for work? Okay. How many of you have on that cell phone antivirus software? That's what I thought. I'm in the right place. And how many of those cell phones that you use for both work and pleasure are company-issued devices? Okay, good. So there are a couple out there. So what we're seeing is that the line between work and home is being blurred by innovation, right? We're all able to get access to our emails from anywhere in the world. We're all able to jump on a video conference call from anywhere in the world. And this is a fairly recent innovation, right? Anybody remember when the first iPhone came to market? Any volunteers? What the date was?
Let's say 2007.
Awesome. June 2007 to be exact. Right, so this is still an emerging technology in the sense that it's only been around for less than 16 years, but yet how many of you can live without your cell phone, whether it's for personal reasons or whether it's for work reasons? And so now that we're dealing with that kind of technology that's enabling us to work anywhere, we almost feel obligated to work at any time, day or night. And you're using technology. How many of you are using your work computer, and is that a company-issued device? Yeah? How many of you use a home computer when you're connecting into work? The computer that is used by your kids for homework or for gaming or for banking and other things like that. Probably a good number of you that are a little embarrassed maybe to raise your hand right now, but that's the reality, unfortunately, that we're facing. And because it's blurring those lines, it's putting us in a compromising situation of cyber risk, where a hacker now has a treasure trove of opportunity to hack into these devices and maybe gain access to not only work information, but maybe banking information. Certainly not homework information after looking at my 15-year-old son, but I'm going to focus on 3 areas that digital transformation has been changing our lives and is requiring that the leaders within our organization start paying attention, because obviously when you're a leader in an organization, you have to try and triage the many things that you're faced with on a daily basis. And oftentimes, we put to the back burner the thing that we either don't understand really well or maybe that we don't want to deal with. But these are 3 things in the technology world that we're probably all using that we really need to try and place higher on our priority list to make sure that they're addressed, because they all present cyber risks to your organization. So working from home is a fairly new technology or innovation that really got put to the test during the pandemic, right? All of a sudden, as was mentioned in the keynote speech, we had to deal with the harsh reality of having to work from home and having to deal with that mobility or lack of mobility, since we're all kind of stuck at home. And employees will say that they want to work from home. That is something that many companies now have to be able to offer to be able to hire somebody of good quality and good standing, because they want that flexibility. But as I kind of alluded to in my opening survey of all of you, that the answers of how companies are making that work mobility a reality aren't always good answers. You're being forced to do what's called BYOD, which is bring your own device to work and have that be used for work. And then sometimes, the physical security that we all have to deal with is a reality of a smartphone or a laptop being vulnerable to being stolen. We've had stories of somebody just going into the convenient mart and somebody breaking the window and taking their laptop out of their car or their cell phone, and now all of a sudden there's a breach not only of your game or your fantasy football scores that you might have on your phone, but now also of your work emails, and who knows what might be in those emails, or the files that you saved onto that phone in the course of doing work. And one thing that's also very much lacking in this work from home environment is policies and procedures, right? Are you allowed to, on your company device, to stream Netflix or other movie platforms? If you work for a large Fortune 100 company, the answer is clearly no. Work devices are for work. But when you're working for a small to mid-sized company that maybe doesn't have the wherewithal or the knowledge in-house on how to prevent employees from streaming Netflix while they're at work or while they're at home, then they just do it. And if surfing the web is something that they like to do on the work computer, who knows what websites they're going to and what kind of clicking they may be doing or downloading they may be doing, introducing potential ransomware or viruses onto those computers. So here are some of the risks. We'll talk about answers to how you can address some of these risks. The next one is cloud computing. So we all established that everyone in this room has a smartphone, right? Well, all those smartphones are right now connecting to the cloud. And what if I were to ask all of you, most speakers, what do? Oh, please silence your cell phone. Let's not get any interruptions. What if I asked all of you to do the opposite? Turn on your ringers, turn on your notifications. How loud do you think you would get in here? Pretty fast, right? Phone calls would start ringing, alerts about fantasy football, updates to your cell phone that you need. Maybe stock market alerts are going to be coming to your phone. Maybe that hacker that's sending you that alert that says, oh, your bank account has been compromised. Click on this link so that we can unlock your account for you. Or that phone call that comes in from someone representing themselves as Microsoft and saying that you need to patch your system and, oh, we'll do it for you. Just let us into your computer. Right, so cloud computing has become the norm in the sense that everyone is using cloud technology. And here is a map of the world where it shows some of the popular locations for data centers for Azure, Google, and Amazon. Azure being Microsoft, for those of you who may not be aware. And as you can see, a lot of those data centers are located overseas. And if you don't specify or pay for that to use a data center that's domestically located, you may have your data located in a foreign data center. What does that mean for HIPAA compliance? What does that mean for Department of Defense compliance if you're in that industry? What does that mean for your own personal records if they're out on Office 365 in a location where they don't have the same privacy regulations and laws afforded like we do with the Fourth Amendment here in the United States, where you have to get a court order to seize your computer information. In these foreign locations, you don't always have that luxury. The other challenge with cloud computing is that, when you had your servers in-house in the office, you knew when they were being updated, modified, accessed, touched, quite simply. When your data is residing on a computer halfway around the world, how can you control that? The reality is you can control it to a certain degree, and we'll talk about some of the technology that's available to do it. But a lot of leaders are not aware that their company information, if they subscribe their email accounts to Office 365 or Google, are going to the other side of the world. And if you're using it for sensitive information, it's not the best idea. So mobile devices, we talked about mobility and how it's making the world smaller. It's how it's making life more flexible and easy to work. 70% of all cyber attacks begin on a smartphone. So we talked about earlier, you don't have antivirus on that phone, but yet you're doing your banking on that phone, or you're doing work on that phone. So things to think about when you're adding more apps. I'm surprised someone hasn't raised their hand yet and asked me about TikTok. Are the Chinese, is the Chinese government stealing our information yet? The one thing I can tell you about TikTok is it's incredibly intrusive. It does look at a lot of information on your phone. What is done with that? I won't comment on. That's for another presentation. But that is the reality. When you go to install a application on your phone, look at what that application has access to and what it is capable of doing. And do you want that application on your phone where you're doing all these other things that may be vital to your organization's stability and viability? Also on smartphones, how many of you for work or for banking receive multi-factor authentication onto that phone? A code or a PIN or even just a button that you have to press, right? So how would it be if that hacker gets access to your multi-factor authentication on your phone, right? We have to treat that device as being much more sensitive than most leaders treat it today. How many of you would admit to your employer that you use your smartphone during work hours for non-work related activities? Right, I mean, that's kind of a, probably none of you, right? But studies have shown that on average, the average employee uses their smartphone for non-work activities between 1 and 2.5 hours a day. And that loss of productivity equates to $15 billion a year across all industries. So again, the need for leaders in our industry to get policies and procedures around the use of these mobility technologies that we all thrive on and need in order to be able to take that Zoom call from the TechBridge conference as opposed to from a home or the office. But the reality is these technologies also open up risks to your organization. All right, so let's start talking about some answers to these problems. And obviously, these aren't all the perfect answers to, there are no perfect answers. I was just being interviewed by Bob Cordero out there, and he's like, what is the answer to this problem? And I'm like, Bob, I don't know. It's just the harsh reality that every time you solve a problem, you don't have antivirus on your smartphones, but you probably have antivirus on your laptops or your PCs. And what is antivirus? Antivirus is that footprint that says, this is what a virus looks like, prevent it from getting on your phone. Well, how did the antivirus company come to find that? There had to be a victim. So there's always an initial victim to every virus. And the unfortunate reality is you can't stay ahead of all the viruses or all the hacking attempts because there's just too many of them. So what we're going to talk about is the number one thing that we can do as a community is treat cybersecurity as a team sport. Right, I have the women's national soccer team up there and Penn State football, right? Hopefully a lot of Penn State fans in the audience. But that is the way we have to approach cybersecurity. It is a community effort. One of the things in my introduction that Bree didn't mention is that I also wear another hat at Lackawanna College as the executive director of their Center for Technology Innovation. And we talk about cybersecurity and our role as an educator in making sure that we are helping our community defend against these cyber threats. It's not something that we can do alone. Nobody at a company can be dubbed the title of cybersecurity professional and be the only one that is guarding those emails, right? Every one of us gets an email that might have an attachment in it or a link that we have to make a conscious decision on whether we're going to click it, whether we're going to download it, whether we're going to respond, whether we're going to issue that wire transfer for $10,000 to our CFO that supposedly overseas. These are decisions that we have to make because we are trained and we are aware. So having a governance team at your organization that pulls in all of the different department heads that are involved in making sure that company is successful is a critical part of your cybersecurity program and plan. It needs to start with awareness and training. Here I am, the cybersecurity guy. I'm trying to make a presentation and my phone locks up as I'm going through my notes. Security, convenience versus security. And that's one of the principles also about cybersecurity is that cybersecurity is a balance between convenience and security. The more convenient something is, the less secure it is, and the less convenient it is, the more secure it is. The next thing that I wanted to just quickly go through is some of the technology tools that are out there that every business leader, regardless of whether you're a small or mid-sized firm or you're a corporate institution, you should have deployed. The first one is mobile device management. That's the tool that companies can use. If you're using your own personal device or a company-issued device, it controls what you have access to on that device. Whether you can open up an email and download a file onto your phone so that when you get terminated, you take that information with you, or when you quit. You want to have mobile device management out there. Multi-factor authentication, by now, we have already talked about MFA a little bit, but that's something that everybody should be deploying regardless of what the application is to help thwart adversaries. The other thing that I didn't mention on here, but that is on a lot of insurance applications out there today, if anybody fills out an application for cyber liability insurance or even general liability insurance, they're asking if you have EDR, endpoint detection and response. The key word there is response. It's a tool that actually responds for you. So it takes kind of some of the responsibility off your hands. So that's another thing that I wanted to mention. And then logging. We talked about international data centers. How do you know what's going on in those international data centers? Logging. You get the logs, which are basically audit logs of what's going on in your Microsoft Office 365 account. It goes to either you or a managed service provider like Site2, and we monitor that to see if someone is logging into your account that shouldn't be, if someone's doing something with your account that is against corporate policies. So in summary, the digital transformation that we've seen over the past 16 to 20 years with the invention of smartphones, with the proliferation of internet access to our homes, has changed the cybersecurity threat and threat landscape for all of us. Flexibility and convenience is inversely related to security, so it's a balancing act that all of our leaders need to face and challenge themselves with and focus on, at least as part of this 20-minute speed dating that we've done here. Talk about at least these three areas, and that's work from home, cloud computing, and mobile device management. We talk about having governance as part of a solution for that, making sure that your employees are aware of the threat, are well trained in how to address that threat. You have a plan, things as simple as if you do have a breach, who's going to deal with the press? Who's going to call the cyber liability insurance company? Now, those things have to be documented because if your CEO or the president who normally has to deal with those organizations is out, you want to make sure that the second in command or whoever you've dubbed is available and well trained on how to deal with that. So we talked about some of the technologies that are now available. Some of these technologies were previously reserved for the Fortune 100s of the world, right? But now they are freely, well, I don't want to say the word free, but they're more available to small and mid-sized companies than they were ever before. Doing log aggregation, it's called SIM technology, security incident and event management, is the aggregation of all the logs. You know, a lot of people like to think of that as Big Brother. The reality is your computer is tracking what you're doing all day, every day, whether you like it or not. The key is anybody looking at what you're doing or where you've been or who is gaining access to your computer who maybe shouldn't have. I'll give you a quick story of a client that we have who they hired a new employee. And within the first 2 weeks of her employment, she received an email that's perpetuated to be from the HR department and that they needed to provide them with their personal information. That person was new, didn't know the difference. It actually happened to be the HR firm for the company had been breached, sent her an email. She responded to the email with her personal information, and wouldn't you know it, 2 days later, started receiving notifications that they were logging into her account. She didn't think too much of it because she was kind of new. She was starting to get multi-factor authentication alerts on her phone. First one comes in, she's like, geez, I'm not trying to log into anything. No. Second one comes in, I'm not trying to log into anything. Clicks no. Third one comes in, I must be doing something wrong. She clicks yes. They were now into her Office 365 account, and within 5 minutes, they installed backup software, backed up all of her email, and were gone before anybody could do anything about it. Luckily, we were able to catch it within half an hour that it happened, and we were able to prevent it from spreading to other accounts on their network. And that's really where cybersecurity plays these days. When you're dealing with foreign adversaries, foreign governments who are funding advanced persistent threats, the key word there is persistent. They will not stop until they get into your account. The key is you need to know that if they do get in, you have the tools to prevent them from getting any further. And those are the tools, you know, you talk about before the attack, during the attack, and after the attack. We've all become accustomed to antivirus before the attack, maybe backup and recovery for after the attack. You certainly don't want to deal with after because now you have the public black eye. Maybe you have the insurance claims to have to deal with. But it's that during that most companies, small and mid, don't know the first thing about how to handle that. And that's where leaders have to start embracing that there is a reality that you can do something about that and you can start preventing it or at least mitigating it as it's happening by having 24/7 monitoring of your network and responding. Questions? Are there any out there? Yes, sir. John?
Does data science and machine learning have a place in threat detection in your field?
Yes. So it is an evolving space, but machine learning has long been A lot of people like to talk about ChatGPT and a lot of the artificial intelligence technology that's coming out, and oh geez, are these machines going to eventually turn into Skynet from, Terminator and start fighting against us? The good news is we're not there yet. But the other good news is that these technologies are being used to make our lives simpler, both in health sciences. This is where we're seeing some of the greatest advancements right now, is the work of, say, a radiologist is being cut in half because they're able to go through information using artificial intelligence much quicker and much more accurately. Similarly, on the cybersecurity side, we're using artificial intelligence to try and anticipate the next move of an attacker. The bad news is the bad guys also have access to artificial intelligence, so it's a constant battle of trying to bring the artificial intelligence on the defensive side up to speed with the artificial intelligence that's being used on the offensive side. So if anybody out there is looking for a career change and you want to get into cybersecurity, you're not going to be lacking for work if you do want to come into this field. I think I saw another hand up. Yes?
Hi, Mark. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Melanie Fuller with Ben Franklin Technology Partners. I was wondering, maybe as a takeaway, we have a lot of small businesses, early stage firms in the room, I assume. They don't always have the resources or the capacity, right? They don't have an IT department. Is there one or two takeaways for smaller organizations that these are the two things you, as the person who got an email that is doing business, that you should have in place today?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, so I'll tell you the approach that we take and that most cybersecurity firms take, and that is initially coming in and doing a cybersecurity assessment. Understanding the security posture, because every firm is in a different stage of maturity when it comes to cybersecurity. Some organizations have done a really good job. They put up a firewall, they have antivirus, anti-malware, they have policies and procedures perhaps, but ultimately it's an analysis of where that organization stands and its evolution. What I can tell you is that the cloud adoption situation is probably one of the biggest challenges. A lot of people will move to free email or the lowest cost email provider that's out there, and we all know that free means that they are reading your emails. If you have a free Gmail account and you're using that for work, why is it that when you send an email about a certain subject, all of a sudden you start getting Google ads for that certain subject, right? It's because somebody isn't necessarily there personally reading those emails, but there is a search engine that is reading those emails for advertising purposes. That's how they make these free email services available to you. So don't use free. When it comes to protecting the most sensitive information that you have out there, I recommend obviously going with a paid platform like Microsoft Office 365. One of the interesting things with Microsoft Office 365, they're continuing on their world domination quest, and that is, they're continuing to offer things that are built into Office 365 that you may not realize it. You subscribe to, say, Microsoft 365 E3, Enterprise 3 Edition, and you don't realize the amount of power that's in that tool from an endpoint detection and response. People just subscribe to it for email, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, but they don't realize that what comes with it is active monitoring technology if you choose to enable it, or strong password technology, or multi-factor authentication technology. All of these things kind of come built in, but it's a matter of whether you configure them and use them. And so those are things that companies need to look at what they're already paying for. Why pay for something more when you already have it under the umbrella of something you're already paying for? So that's usually a lesson that we were able to teach companies.
We have a lot of incubators and tech organizations in the area that are coming along. Is there a way to add cybersecurity to the shared services offered at some of those places? And in addition to computer space and copiers, can there be a cybersecurity package that comes with being part of an incubator?
I'd love to explore that with you. The answer in short is yes. Obviously there's a cost associated with, but whether it's Ken Okrepke down there talking about incubators or somebody else, he's got to go. But in general, I would say the answer is yes, and it's probably something that historically was not seen as critical. You get your financial advice, you get your HR advice, some of these things that are helping you to limit your liability on the financial side or limit your liability on the HR side. But if you have a hacker that comes in and you're an emerging company and you can't afford to pay a $30,000 ransomware ticket, then you're out of business. And so it should be part of your general risk mitigation strategy to have at least a plan and to grow that plan as you emerge and grow as a small business. So I would say yes. We've actually talked with Ken a little bit about it, and we are exploring it with Don and Ken's help.